Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Guys That Magic. This is Hunter and Dave.
Yo.
And we are continuing down our list of the pre-constructed commander decks that they have announced for Dungeons & Dragons Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. This time, we're going to be taking a look at Planar Portal, the Rakdos commander deck. And we're going to be talking about what cards to take out, what cards to add, just things, make it a little better. But first things first, let's talk about the front-faced commander, and that is Prosper Tomebound. Prosper Tomebound is a legendary creature, Tiefling Warlock. He costs 2 generic, a black, and a red for a 1/4. He has Death Touch. He also says that at the beginning of your end step, exile the top card of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. He also has, whenever you play a card from exile, create a treasure token. First things first, what do you think of the face commander of the set, Dave?
I love it and I hate it.
Why?
So, the reasons why I think this card is super cool. Number one is because of the creature type on this thing. So I don't know if it's Tiefling or Tiefling. I don't know how to pronounce this. I don't play D&D, so I apologize. Feel free to correct us down below. Somebody write that down phonetically, and I probably should have done my homework to actually know how to pronounce this thing. But
We're Magic players.
I love the fact that they're incorporating some of these creature types that we don't get to see in Magic. D&D as another fantasy has so much to offer, and I'm surprised that we don't get to see more stuff like that, especially because of the relationship between D&D and Magic the Gathering. So I really hope that this is something that continues. I hope to see more of these creature types because honestly, I feel like with Wizards of the Coast, with Magic the Gathering, we get to go to all of these really, really cool planes. And I feel oftentimes we get the same creature types over and over and over again. We get vampires and zombies and elves, and there's just so
Squirrels.
many more things. Don't get me on squirrels. there's so many other cool things that we could be doing. So I love to see that they're branching out with some creature types, and I hope this is something they actually do continue moving forward. The second reason why I love this card is because of these like little flavor keywords here. So he has 2 abilities, the first of which being Mystic Arcanum, and then the second one being Pact Boon, which I think is really, really, really cool for a D&D set because it gives these characters like these abilities so that whenever you're using them, I don't know, it has like a keyword to go along with it. Now, opposite my last opinion, I hope that they never do this again because I actually hate this, the way that it looks on a Magic card, but I think it's super cool for D&D. Just
So
don't
just
do
like the
it.
card itself, you love it and hate it, huh?
I do. Now, that was everything that I loved about this card. I hate everything else. So Rakdos, and this like hurts my soul because Rakdos is my favorite color pairing. Black and red are my 2 favorite colors, and I will jam those in like every EDH deck. I'm trying to think right now, like my three most played EDH decks all have this color pairing in them. Let's talk a little bit about the card. So for 4 mana, this will get you a 1/4 with Death Touch. So this is a very defensive creature. You're not swinging in. You're not probably dealing a whole lot of damage with him. He's a 1/4. The other thing here being is it says at the beginning of your end step, you exile the top card of your library, and until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. Now, it's nice you get to play it because if you end up exiling a land, you still have access to it. However, as we're going to dive into this deck here in a moment, this deck has a lot of super, super high mana value cards. And I feel like oftentimes what could end up happening is you're going to exile the top card of your library and it be an 8-drop. And you say, okay, that's cool that I can play it, but I can't cast it. So it's just gone.
Yeah.
His second ability does try to remedy that. It says whenever you play a card from exile, create a treasure token. But looking at this card, I sit here and I scratch my head. The commander deck that we just reviewed before this one, the Bant one, has a card draw engine stapled to the commander that you could potentially cast 2, 3, 4 cards from the top of your library every turn. And this, for the same mana cost, can do it at most once. So to me, they function so similarly. but this one has some limiters placed on him that the other one doesn't. Now, I really wish that Prosper, with this deck, you could cast the exiled card so long as he was in play, because I feel like that would be a nice little limiter to it, that you still had to at least have access to him for you to be able to play those cards. But I can't help but feel like you're going to be put into situations where you're either going to exile a card that you can't afford to cast, you're going to be exiling a card that you may not want to cast given that situation. I mean, you could exile over a board wipe and be in a commanding position and be totally fine into your turn, and then that card goes away, and then later on need that board wipe and know that you're just screwed because it's not even a part of your deck anymore. And I know that you can make the argument of like it's all just still random in your deck, so you wouldn't have known had you drawn that card anyways. But to me, I see that this is, in a lot of situations, just going to be eating things and kind of forcing your hand in what you should be playing, just so that you can get those treasure tokens. So I'm not a fan of, mechanically speaking, how this commander works. The other thing that I have a lot of issues with this deck is it seems to be significantly more unfocused than the other pre-constructed commander decks. So looking at this from just general themes, the big theme of this being that it can cast things from exile. The sub-themes in this deck, however, though, it cares about sacrifice, it cares about tokens, it has a ton of dice rolling cards, and it also cares about treasures. So to me, this deck just kind of comes across as being all over the place. Some of the highlights from it is, out of all the decks that we're going to talk about for this, all the pre-constructed decks, I think that this one has the best artifact base. So as far as just ramp goes, it's nice. And I'm happy to see that the talisman got reprinted in this list. The talismans were starting to creep up a little bit in price. So it's cool to see it. I was actually hoping that the other talismans would get printed as well, but they didn't. So I don't know. It's got some ups and downs to it.
Gotta wait for that Commander Legends 2 set. That's another video. So what cards do you think you would remove from this?
This has a lot coming out of it, to be completely honest with you. So my first thing, just like the last video, is all of the dice rolling cards are removed. I don't like any of the dice rolling cards. And in fact, there's a dice rolling card here that I specifically want to talk about as the reason why I hate this mechanic.
Okay.
Reckless Endeavor is a sorcery in this deck that costs 5 and 2 red, so a total of 7 mana. It says roll 2d12 and choose one result. Reckless Endeavor deals damage equal to the result to each creature. Then create a number of treasure tokens equal to the other result. For 7 mana, I can roll 2d12s and roll 2 1s to make 1 treasure token and deal 1 damage. Now, I know that that's worst case scenario for this card.
But with your luck.
Not even with my luck. It's just like that is a possible outcome here. And for 7 mana, the way that I look at cards, like if you're casting a 7 drop or anything greater than that, you need to be winning the game that turn.
Yeah.
And at absolute best, this is a board wipe that pays for itself. That's just not okay. And especially whenever I think of like, how can you upgrade this deck? What about, and I hate to make the comparison here because I know that this is like the best board wipe in Commander for red, but what about something like Blasphemous Act? Blasphemous Act can cost only 1 red mana. So it's 7 times cheaper than this, and it will still wipe the board.
Right.
So I can't wrap my head around why there's so much expensive junk in here. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to go down the list of some other cards that I would like to take out. So, oh boy. So the first one here being the Pontiff of Blight. This is a card that I feel like is super popular with these pre-constructed decks. It's 6 mana for a 2/7. It has Extort, and other creatures you control have Extort. This is a super, super dirtily card. I get that, yes, okay, this is not an aggressive deck by any means, so that life gain and drainage might actually be something that you want to do. I don't like 6-drops that are you going to sit back and do nothing. And it has a decent butt to it, but I mean, any creature with flying is just going to go over. As you're going to quickly figure out with these 4 pre-constructed decks, one of them is filled with flyers, and one of them is attacking you with a creature that will have much more than 7 power. So that 7 toughness on a body that's stuck to the ground really doesn't even block all that well here. I'm also taking out Marionette Master. Same thing. This is a 6 mana for a 1/3. Yes, it creates a couple more creatures whenever, or no, I'm sorry, it can create a couple more creatures whenever it enters the play or whenever it enters the battlefield. However, it's very artifact heavy, and although I do think that this deck has the best artifact base, and especially considering it has all those treasures in there, I can't help but feel like with all of these incredibly heavy drops, and even the spells that aren't that heavy, they require multiple color pips. You're probably going to be burning through those treasures more often than not. I don't want a card that really requires that I store up those. Apex of Power I saw on this deck as another card, and I just kind of facepalmed. This is a 10-drop. Guys, just don't.
But it's big.
It is. It's big, and you're going to be dead long before you can cast this. You're going to have more games that end before you get to 10 mana than games where you're going to cast this card. And at that point, this would be better if it were replaced with literally any other card. Fevered Suspicion is another card that I removed from this deck. This is a new one, but it costs 8 mana. And this is another card that has that chaos sub element to it. It has that random factor in that you can cast things that would have been cards your opponents would have controlled. So it says each opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card, and you may cast any number of spells from among those non-land cards without paying their mana costs. They can pull one card, and you're done, and you paid 8 mana for it, and you don't get to control it. I don't like this chaos that has the potential to bite you in the ass, and that's why I don't like these dice rolling cards, especially not at 8 mana. So there's a board wipe in the deck as well, and I get why the board wipe is in here because you're suspending it, so you're casting it from exile. And that being Phthisis or Phthisis, I don't know how to pronounce this card. It's going to kick my ass. You're going to suspend this. It's a board wipe. I'm sorry. It's not a board wipe. Oh my god, I read this card wrong. I forgot what this card does. It's weaker than what I thought it was. It's a creature removal spell. And if you're in a pinch, you can remove a creature for 7 mana, and 4 of that is all black pips. So it's hard as shit to cast. Or you can suspend it and wait 5 turns.
That seems real good, dude. Why would you take that out?
That is so ass. My last card in here, because I have fond memories of this one, just kind of sitting back and giggling at, is Hex. Hex, for 4 black is a sorcery that says destroy 6 target creatures. I'm giggly about this because whenever I first started playing Magic, I had a friend of mine who put this inside of I think it was like a vampire tribal deck that he had. The fun thing about Hex is that it's not destroy up to 6 target creatures. You actually have to have 6 targets in play to cast the spell. So if your opponent has 1 creature that's a problem and you need to get rid of it, and that's it, you can't cast this. This card gets worse the fewer players that are in play. And eventually, if you really need to, you may be blowing up your board in the process. This is a board wipe for 6 mana that doesn't kill everything. It's not single target removal.
Yeah. It seems real good.
See, you're over here and you're laughing because there's so many cards in this deck that are just complete crap and just make me scratch my head. I feel like this is going to be the deck that we get the most shit in the comments for. So,
well, if those are what you're taking out, what are you putting in?
So there are a couple of cards that I'm going to be trying to improve this deck with. My mind originally went with some of the creatures that you can cast from exile. And in Rakdos, there are 2. There's Eternal Scourge, which is a 3 mana Eldrazi, and there's Squee the Immortal. I get that your commander can cast a card that he exiles, but I want to have more control over it. These are both cards that I can cast from exile just as a part of the text on the card. So if there is a way for me to be able to exile those cards out, I can start getting them back. So just kind of as, I don't know, I guess a way for a little bit more control, but even at that, these are cards that don't really do a whole lot unless you have an engine behind them.
Yeah.
Another card that I looked at and just kind of desperately trying to find some stuff here is I don't really want to rely super heavily on the treasure tokens for me to be able to make mana, especially because there are so many cards in this deck that require like 3 or 4 specific pips for colors, and that just seems absolutely insane to me. So one of the cards that I wanted to throw in here as well would be Mana Forge Sender. It's a hybrid black or red for a 1/1. You could pay 1 mana and you can turn that 1 into a black or a red, and you can do that up to 3 times in a turn. So it kind of helps to figure out like you're going to be actually doing something, hopefully. Casting spells. It's going to fix your mana. Also included in here being things like Phyrexian Altar or Ashnod's Altar. This being another way for you to be able to make a little bit of mana. And then one of the sub-themes of this deck being Sacrifice. Both of those cards are making mana on sacrificing creatures. So there is the element of this deck that you can go off and you can cast some of your opponent's cards or steal some of your opponent's stuff. If you're stealing it, you don't want to be giving it back to your opponent. So this allows you to turn it into mana for you, turn it into something positive. Some other cards that I have in here being things like Dream Devourer or Tegrid's Shadow. Same kind of thing here. Whenever we're sacrificing stuff, I want to be making sure that I'm taking advantage of it. And this allows you to, you know what, I am so sorry about that. So Tegrid's Shadow is actually a Foretell card. So I have these in here because I thought it was kind of interesting that Foretell actually has that card get exiled, and then you can cast that card from exile. So once again, trying to control when it is that I'm exiling and when I'm not. Some of the other ones that I looked at, I tried to fit Madness into this deck without doing a serious overhaul. It's not really possible. And then there are some other small things that I have in here, being some of the adventure cards that we got from Eldraine. So being things like the Embrith Shieldbreaker, destroy target artifact, and then you can cast the creature portion. It's a small little creature. Foulmire Knight, which is just kind of like a small little, like, it's a draw card. Or Murderous Rider, which is probably the only one here that I've actually mentioned, which is even halfway decent. But it is creature removal on an okay-ish body that gives you a little bit of life back in the case that it blocks. So there's that.
You could also add Bone Crusher Giant.
You know, I could include Bone Crusher Giant. I feel like the, what is it, Savage Stomp, the shock aspect of him is not great in Commander. I don't actually think he's got a great body for Commander either. But I mean, it is another card that it's a good adventure card that you could put in here.
Yeah.
The last include in this, and just kind of being the one that I thought might be fun to emphasize one of the themes of this deck, would be to put something on like Possibility Storm. So Possibility Storm, instead of casting the card that you want to, you're actually going to exile the top card of your library until you reveal a card that shares a type with it, and you're going to cast that other thing instead. And everybody's doing this now. So this is an effect that's going to affect your opponents as well. So everyone is casting things from exile. Every single spell you cast will be from exile. So you're going to start making treasure on everything. It is chaos. And I mentioned in another video that I don't like chaos. But this is chaos that hits everyone that you're capitalizing on. So this is the kind of chaos that I'm cool with. You're screwing your opponents over. And yeah, things are going to get wacky on your end too. But you're making those treasure tokens while you're doing it. So there is a benefit here. And then just as like a general win condition, because I, for the life of me, just could not find one for this deck, I figured let's throw in Torment of Hellfire. You're going to have a lot of treasures. The game is probably going to go on for like 3 or 4 days because this deck is so slow. So just cast it for 1 million.
That's it, huh?
That honestly, this is my least favorite of the 4 pre-constructed decks, and it's really not close.
Well,
and that hurts. I love Rakdos.
That does hurt. So that's it. that's your upgrade, right?
I mean, if we
That's the
want to call
best.
it that, that's just me trying to find some kind of focus on this.
Well, once again, to everyone that's been watching this far, please like the video, subscribe if you haven't already to subscribe to the channel. Comment down below what you think is also good in this deck, and if you agree or disagree with us, because you definitely could, because everybody has an opinion.
Don't forget to go check out the other videos as well, because the other 3 actually are good. Just this one is the one I was bitching about.
Yes, of course. All the other videos should be up. Well, I mean, they were coming out one at a time. But who knows when you're watching this? Go check out the other videos. Until next time, this is Guys That Magic. Hope you guys have a great day.
Take it easy.